What if the courtroom silence spoke louder than justice? When a man's tears were met with laughter, someone unexpected decided it wouldn't end that way. A judge smirked mid-sentencing, unaware of who just walked through that courtroom door. Ever witnessed a grown man weep in front of strangers while the room stays frozen? No coughs, no shifting, just a funeral home hush before the sermon begins. That's how it felt inside a Columbus, Georgia courtroom one rainy Tuesday. Darnell Reeves stood before the bench, shoulders quaking, voice breaking as he struggled past the knot in his throat. A 38-year-old father of two, eyes puffy, suit too snug, trying to explain how he's been fixing his path. "I know I messed up," he whispered, barely audible, "but I ain't that man no more." His public defender gave a silent nod. This wasn't about violence or headlines, just a missed parole check-in and a broken curfew after a warehouse shift. But Judge Harold Kessler's courtroom didn't run on grace. He wore his robe like a battle shield, an older white man in his 60s, hair slicked like a legal drama character, minus the lights and cameras. Kessler leaned back, adjusted his glasses, and stared at Darnell like a fly on his lunch. "They all say that," he muttered, "to no one and everyone." Darnell blinked, confused. "I'm sorry?" he asked. Kessler smirked. "Save it, Mr. Reeves. We've heard it all before." Then came the laugh, short, cold, and cutting, like Darnell's hurt was just bad acting. The room didn't flinch. It thickened. The bailiff shifted his belt. The clerk typed harder. Someone coughed. But Darnell just stared, his face crumbling into something heavier than guilt. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve and tried again, but the words stayed stuck, not for lack of meaning, but because meaning didn't matter here. He could have recited a psalm. It wouldn't change Kessler's eyes. That was the real sting, not the laugh, but that it hit exactly as intended. Just as the judge reached for the folder, Darnell mumbled, "Sir, my kids. They think I'm doing better. They're watching." Kessler paused, pen in hand. "That's between you and your decisions." But decisions hit different when the system already picked a side. The thing about Darnell, he wasn't always this trembling man. A decade ago in his Albany neighborhood, folks knew him as the guy who fixed kids' bikes and helped old Mr. Johnson with groceries. But none of that mattered now. Not to Kessler. Not when a record shadows you like midday sun. Darnell's story didn't begin in that courtroom. It began one summer night at 19. Just a favor, giving a ride to a pawn shop. No plan to steal. But an unregistered handgun in the glove box earned him 5 years. First offense, no priors. Didn't matter. He came out at 24, jobless, watched like prey by his parole officer. One wrong move and you're back. Still, he tried. Took cleanup gigs, sent money to his kids, called weekly, read bedtime stories through a cracked screen. Then 2 years ago, a friend helped him get a solid job at a furniture warehouse near Phoenix City. Real pay, real hope. But long shifts, late nights, and busted rides caught up. He crashed at a coworker's place. Missed curfew. Violation. Missed a follow-up due to a broken-down car. Another mark. Now he stood in court, mocked for caring too much. But here's what the judge didn't know. What no one knew. Veronica did. She'd been tracking her younger brother quietly, even through the silence he built from guilt. Their last call ended with slammed doors, his, not hers. But when she saw his name buried in a parole notice forwarded by a Georgia Justice Project contact, her gut twisted. She knew that name, knew that story, and she wasn't about to let it end here. So she did what she did best. She dug. Through transcripts, parole files, even Kessler's rulings. And in the noise most ignore, she spotted a pattern. When justice turns into a quiet war, it takes more than courage to fight back. It takes family. and Veronica Moore came ready for battle. Unless you knew where to look, you'd miss it. How men like Darnell got sentences twice as long for the same mistakes. Veronica didn't miss it. She found an old clip too, buried in local news archives. A 22-year-old black man, same courtroom, same setup, same cold dismissal from Judge Kessler. That was enough. She packed a bag, cleared her calendar, and drove from Savannah to Columbus. She didn't tell Darnell. No false hope, no promises she might break. But if that judge was planning to bury her brother, she'd make sure he had to dig deep to do it. First, though, she had to walk in, just 5 steps away now. Ever felt secondhand shame, like your stomach flips even though it's not happening to you? That's what hit the courtroom when Kessler let out a short, dry chuckle that echoed like something heavy had crashed. Darnell stood still, hands clasped, eyes still raw. The look of a man who'd cried too many times to hide it. The court reporter froze mid-keystroke, glanced up, then resumed. The public defender shifted, uneasy. Behind Darnell, folks waiting for their own hearings looked down, some strangers, some maybe neighbors. But no one moved, not cold, controlled. That was Kessler's power. No yelling, no insults. He used silence like a weapon, a smirk like a gavel. Just being bored in your direction could shrink you to nothing. "Mr. Reeves," he said, voice clipped, "we're not here to revisit your childhood or dissect your parenting. You violated parole. That's it." The bailiff by the bench stood rigid, jaw tight, like he didn't want to be part of this. Darnell tried again. "I'm not making excuses. I'm not running. I've been working. I slipped up, but—" "Enough," Kessler said, tapping his gavel. "Not to restore order, but to silence him. Sit." Darnell slumped into his chair, drained. Kessler reached for the folder. "Based on repeated non-compliance, I see no reason to—" Click. The courtroom door opened. No bang, no warning. Just a soft sound and a gust of air. And in walked Veronica Moore, navy suit tailored to precision, black heels clicking with confidence, braids pulled back with purpose. She moved like someone who didn't just belong, but owned the space. Every head turned. Even the clerk stopped typing. Kessler blinked. "Excuse me." "Apologies for the interruption," she said, steady, firm. "I'm Veronica Moore, and I'm here to represent Mr. Reeves." The public defender turned, stunned. Darnell looked up, eyes wide. "Veronica," he whispered. She met his gaze, and for a moment the courtroom vanished. No judge, no guards, no benches, just 2 siblings reuniting after 12 long years. "I got you," she said gently, then turned to the bench. "I filed a motion to substitute counsel this morning. It should be in your inbox." Caught off guard, Kessler straightened, robe rustling. "Miss Moore, this is highly irregular." "Not illegal," she replied coolly. He scowled. "This is a parole hearing, not a trial. Which still requires fairness, state and federal. Something this courtroom has lacked." Gasps, real ones. A woman in the second row covered her mouth. A young attorney blinked like lightning just struck. But Veronica wasn't here for theatrics. She came to flip the script, and she was only getting started. Kessler's face twisted, the look of a man unaccustomed to challenge. He leaned back, his chair groaning under pride. "Ms. Moore," he said, drawing out her name like a bad taste, "you're out of jurisdiction. This is a local matter." Veronica calmly placed a folder on the table. "Respectfully, Your Honor, justice doesn't have a zip code." Murmurs rippled. Kessler's jaw clenched. Veronica didn't flinch. She turned to the room so everyone could hear. "This isn't just about a missed curfew. It's about a pattern of biased enforcement, selective punishment, and a parole system that treats poor black men like throwaways." The words dropped like stones, measured and forceful. Darnell watched her, torn between disbelief and gratitude. Last time they spoke, He told her to quit trying, said he was too far gone, and for a while, she believed him. But the day she saw his name in that forwarded email, everything shifted. She remembered how their mom used to sit them on the porch and say, "You don't have to always get along, but you always fight for family." Veronica didn't return for closure. She came because no one else would. I've collected records from 5 prior cases in this courtroom, similar violations, all white defendants. Outcomes: community service, counseling. I've got transcripts, sentencing notes, even audio. She laid them out one by one. Boom, 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 like dominoes. Kessler shifted in his seat. "This is irrelevant to today's hearing." "On the contrary, Your Honor, it's entirely relevant, because it reveals how this court sees Mr. Reeves, not as a man, but as a foregone conclusion." The room was still. Even the bailiff looked like he wanted to disappear. Veronica turned to Darnell once more. "Tell them about the overtime, Dee." He hesitated. "It matters," she said. Darnell cleared his throat. "I've been working 12-hour shifts at the warehouse in Ledonia. Some nights I don't clock out until after midnight. I didn't miss check-ins because I was out partying. I was working, trying to pay back child support, trying to keep my head above water." He paused, eyes on the floor. "I'm not asking for a free pass, just a fair shot." Kessler didn't respond right away. You could see the gears grinding behind his eyes. He wasn't used to this, being on the defensive. His courtroom had always run on silence and control. But now all eyes were on him, and they weren't blinking. Veronica stepped forward, one hand resting calmly on her folder. "I've also filed a formal complaint with the State Judicial Qualifications Commission, based on repeated signs of bias in Mr. Reeves' case and others." She looked him straight in the eye. "If I have to stand here every single day until someone listens, I will." The air in the room shifted, cooler, heavier. This was no longer just about parole. It was about power. Who held it and who had been misusing it? Kessler's jaw tightened. "I'll review the motion. Court is in recess until this afternoon." He slammed the gavel, harder than before. Whispers spread like wildfire. The clerk stood. The bailiff opened the side door. But Darnell stayed frozen, watching Veronica gather her papers like she'd just wrapped up a business meeting. "You didn't have to come," he muttered. She didn't look at him. "And you didn't have to stop calling." Then she turned to face him. "Bridges don't burn on their own, Dee. Somebody's got to light the match. But you can still rebuild them, one plank at a time." Afternoon sunlight spilled through the courtroom windows like a spotlight, casting long shadows on the floor and every crease on Judge Kessler's face. But he didn't look as sure anymore. His fingers tapped slowly on the chair's arm, searching for rhythm, for control. Darnell sat straighter, not confident, still tense, still bracing for the blow. But something was different now. Veronica sat beside him, flipping through papers with that same quiet focus she used to have at the kitchen table, back when their mom still made Sunday dinners. Court resumed. The clerk called the case. Kessler cleared his throat. "Ms. Moore, you may proceed." Veronica wasted no time. "I'd like to enter the following items into the record. First, a full employment timeline confirming Mr. Reeves was working overtime, both nights in question, documented by his employer. Second, a signed statement from his supervisor at Monroe's Furniture Assembly, verifying both the hours and transportation issues." She handed copies to the bailiff. Third, a report from a licensed clinical counselor confirming Mr. Reeves' active participation in anger management and trauma therapy. Kessler flipped through the pages. "And what exactly is all this meant to prove?" Veronica held her ground. "That he's not a threat. He's not a repeat offender. He's a man doing everything that's been asked of him while navigating obstacles no one else in this room has to. He's not gaming the system. He's surviving it. And if justice means anything here, it should mean knowing the difference between failure and being failed. She stepped forward, not aggressive, just deliberate. You've presided over 26 parole violation cases in the past 3 years, Your Honor. Of the 9 white defendants, only 2 were sent back to prison. Of the 17 black defendants, 15 were. Same charges, same courtroom, same judge. Silence. You could hear it, thick charged. She let it sit. I'm not here to accuse you of racism, Judge Kessler. I'm here to remind you of the oath you took. To be fair, to be just, to be better than this. Kessler's face flushed a deeper shade, but he didn't say a word. Then, something no one expected. A hand lifted from the back row. A woman in a gray sweater who'd sat silent all morning. The judge frowned. I'm sorry, she said, voice soft but steady. May I speak? Kessler sighed. This isn't a public forum. But Veronica turned to him. If she has relevant testimony, she has a right to be heard. He hesitated, then gave a grudging nod. The woman stood. My name is June Wallace. My son, Elijah, stood in this exact spot 2 years ago. Same violation as Mr. Reeves. Same judge. My boy got 90 days. He lost his job, his apartment, his son. Her voice cracked. I'm just saying, I see a pattern too, and I'm not the only one. A few heads around the room nodded. Murmurs stirred, quiet but undeniable. Veronica turned back to the bench. I'm not asking you to ignore the law. I'm asking you to apply it equally. Darnell sat still, watching his sister, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Seen. Kessler looked down, flipping through the paperwork, his fingers pausing mid-page. Judge Kessler looked at the employment records, and for the first time that day, he let out a sigh. Ms. Moore, he said, his voice quieter now, your arguments have been noted. Then he turned to Darnell. Mr. Reeves, in light of the new evidence and the compelling presentation by your counsel, I am postponing a final decision. You will remain on parole, continue weekly reporting, and attend additional counseling. No jail time. A wave of breath swept the room, this time a gasp. Relief. Darnell blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. Kessler stood. Court is adjourned. The gavel dropped, sharp and final, but the silence that followed wasn't tense. It was soft, freeing. Whispers rose, warm this time. June Wallace gave Darnell a quiet thumbs up before slipping through the side door. Veronica calmly packed her folder like it was any other Tuesday. Darnell stood slowly and turned to her, emotion heavy in his eyes. I didn't know you'd come, he said. She gave a small shrug, but her voice cracked just a touch. Didn't mean I wasn't watching. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't start with an apology. Sometimes it just needs a reason to try again. The room emptied out, but Darnell stayed. Sat there, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped tight, like a man who'd been underwater for years and was finally learning how to breathe again. Veronica stood near him, silent, waiting. She didn't push, didn't offer a clever line. Just stood there, like she had when he was 16 and locked himself in his room, too mad at the world to talk. Eventually he rose. Thank you, he said, quiet and real. I mean it. She looked him in the eye. It's not over, but you're still here. That's what matters. He gave a short laugh. Not bitter, not forced, just honest. Man, he said, shaking his head, I really thought I was done. You were, she smirked. Until the timer ran out, they stepped outside together. The clouds were breaking apart, afternoon sun sneaking through, washing over the courthouse steps. A few reporters hovered at the edge of the lawn, unsure if what happened inside was headline-worthy. But it wasn't about press, not about scandal. It was about someone finally standing up and saying, enough. They walked in silence for a while. past the trees lining the sidewalk, past the people pretending not to watch them. Darnell glanced at her. "You really think that judge'll change?" Veronica didn't answer right away. She kept looking straight ahead, like the truth was still a few steps down the road. "Maybe not," she said finally. "But now he knows someone's watching, and next time, he'll think twice before he laughs at another man's pain." Darnell nodded, slow and thoughtful. "That counts for something." They stopped near the curb. His ride wasn't there yet. He stared down at the sidewalk, then back at her. "You think I could come see the kids this weekend?" he asked. "I mean, if it's not too soon." Veronica smiled softly. "It's not too soon." She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo, creased, worn at the edges. It was the last picture of the three of them together, back when their mother was still alive. She placed it in his hand. "Don't waste this chance, Dee." He took the photo like it might break, holding it with the same care someone gives to things they almost lost for good. "I won't," he whispered. They stood there for a while longer. Two siblings who'd lost too many years, but not each other. Because sometimes the system doesn't need to collapse. Sometimes it just needs one crack, wide enough for someone to step through. And today, that crack came in the shape of a sister walking through a courtroom door. Because change doesn't always come in thunder. Sometimes it walks in wearing a navy blue suit and simply says, "We're not done yet." Justice isn't just about laws. It's about what we do when nobody's watching. If you see someone being dragged down by the very system meant to protect them, don't stay silent. Speak up, show up. Be the voice that echoes when it matters most. If this story touched you, share it. Start the conversation. And if you know a Darnell, give him that second chance. You never know what he might do with it.